In this video, I'll be exploring some of the benefits and problems of psychedelic insight. So, over the past 2 weekends, I have microdosed, meaning 1/3 of a dose on a more full stomach rather than a full dose on an empty stomach. If you've got a lot of stuff going on, the dose doesn't have as much impact. So with San Pedro, one's supposed to take roughly an arm length of cactus and boil it down and then consume it. And with mushrooms, it can vary. 5 grams is considered a heroic dose. I'm consuming, less than 1 mushroom, less than a gram. And so it's a subtler effect. And what I like about that is there's more freedom to relax into the state. For example, yesterday, I consumed the San Pedro and mushroom, and I can still feel some of the effects in my body today. There was nothing that stopped me functioning and doing normal things, but there is an overlay, and that overlay allows for a movement more deeply into the place and into what is somewhat of a parallel place, which is the cerebral processing arena. Now, the value in a psychedelic journey is partly one of comparison, right? If you say pick a color, any color, and you give one color, it's not much of a choice, and there's not much to compare. However, so right there, I just went off to a different thought. So that also, anytime you've got change that are both held in consciousness, and this is, of course, the gift of memory, to be able to focus on one thing, focus on another thing, and kind of go back and forth and witness them. There are potential observations. Now, those can be profound observations, or they can be, micro observations, but there are potential observations, and the observations have the potential to be useful. So what I'm noticing this morning is a tension in my neck, a tension in my jaw, and a tension, it's a posture like this. And then I'm referencing that more expanded, bigger, kind of more giving energy that I had in the psychedelic experience. So I've now got a tension. And what I'm noticing is that the amount of fear that I have in kind of normal life, the amount of fear and holding that I have in normal energy, normal life, stops me from flowing emotion, thought, spontaneous action, spontaneous giving. My clenching energy stops that, number one. The second thing I notice is it gives me a headache and it blocks flow. It blocks energy, it blocks life, it blocks flow. So all that anxiety, but it blocks giving. And the fear that is the picture that is kind of an archetypal picture that's producing those states is a picture of giving and being hurt, giving and being bullied, giving and being humiliated. It's about being in that present flow and energy, and being bullied, humiliated, exploited, used, raped, and also being invisible. Invisible in the giving, invisible in the flowing, and invisible in the hurt, and discarded. So that's the picture that is producing the fear of that picture, the fear of that particular pain, of not being met in this energy and in being discarded, confused, hurt, small, being left in a confused, hurt, small place and discarded as the bullies move on, to the next target. And then there's no one I can talk to in the cult framework. So I feel now 5 years old, small, hurt, lonely, scared, humiliated. And there isn't a single person in the cult to talk to. There's no witnesses. And there's no awareness that something big has gone on. I arrived full of myself, present, alive, etc., and I left in shame, feeling alone, scared, small, humiliated, worthless. And in that state, and with that awareness that 3 or 4 big people wanted me to feel this way, intentionally orchestrated this so that I would feel this way, and then intentionally left so that I would feel alone, and that nobody did anything about it. And if I turn to my mother's energy, she's not interested in doing anything about it. She's dissociated from these feelings and the awareness of their impact. If I turn to my father, he will not protect me and his energy. And if I turn to the cult, every single person is tuning me out, watching TV, thinking about other things, worrying, moving on. And so there's no one here. I don't know how to lift all this energy off. I don't know how to grieve the loss of soul, the loss of empathy, the loss of trust. Trust has been broken. The entire cult participated in this abandonment and betrayal. The betrayal of innocence, the abandonment of innocence. The betrayal of trust, the abandonment of trust. The hurt and the abandonment of hurt. So that's the feeling that I don't want to have. And so in order not to have that feeling in a cult that doesn't honor that feeling, right? In a cult that doesn't honor that feeling, that doesn't heal that feeling, that doesn't hold and love that feeling. Now, there are feminine presences that I was not raised with that do weep, that do cry, that do hold a child for whom that has happened. there are those presences. They're just not in my vicinity as a child. I actually think of one of my tutors teaching me painting had a little bit of that energy. So if I turned to her energy, she would hold me and she would understand what went on. But that's about the only energy signature I can find. You see, and she wasn't there. And so there's a lot of coldness and there's a lot of cruelty. There's a lot of malice that's being directed at that 5-year-old. And this extends to humiliation jokes, being made to feel small, being made to feel stupid by my father, by my kindergarten teacher, by other teachers, by other classmates. The enjoyment that grown-ups have at the dissociative confusion of a child. Isn't he stupid? Isn't he dumb? The cynical laughter about that is communicating that no one will go into this place with me, that I will be alone in this place. It will be given to me by my cult, but I will be alone feeling it. And having felt that repeatedly as a pattern of being shamed, a pattern of being humiliated, a pattern of being hurt, a pattern of being hit, having been given this state repeatedly, there's a sense of that energy being here. Now, I want to be anywhere else but here, which somewhat perpetuates the problem. Because when a child learns that the only when a child learns that the grown-ups around it want it to feel bad, want it to feel small, and are not interested in the felt experience of that child or the needs of that child. And then they leave. They go away from that feeling. Oh, it's not such a big deal. Come on, let's go. That's leaving that feeling. That's saying, come on, get out of that feeling. Slapping the person out of the state. I want you to move. There isn't any time for this feeling. Well, that just locks the feeling into ice. I mean, you can dissociate, but as soon as you dissociate from something, it goes numb. It goes hard. It doesn't flow. And this dissociative, violent movement away from the feeling further shames and humiliates the persona that's feeling the feelings. That is basically given a feeling to hold by the cult and then is asked to disown the part that is holding that feeling and to become a substitute part that wants to move along. Now, there's tremendous grief in this terrain, but the pattern that I learned was to enervate and go through and past the feeling, because that is the pattern that was practiced, that was embodied by every member of my cult. The ones who gave me the feeling, the ones who wanted me to have the feeling, the ones who laughed and humiliated me for holding the stunned feeling. Because this is not a feeling that creates sharpness. This is not a feeling that creates awareness, creativity, joy. It is a stunned, overwhelming shock feeling. So repeatedly, I would be given this feeling. I would be stunned and overwhelmed and shocked. And then I would be given a rapid set of balls. Curveballs would be thrown at me, and not deliberately. It's just there's so much dissociation from this feeling in our cult that everyone around me would act as if this feeling did not exist in themselves and did not exist in me, and yet it had just been given to me in an overwhelming way. And then they would, basically put you into shock and throw a tennis ball at you. And the tennis ball would bounce off my face. And then everyone would laugh because I was stupid, because I couldn't catch the ball in this stunned place. Now that ball might be move, get out of the road, eat your food, grab your bag and go. Let's get in the car. The ball would take different shapes, but the pattern of shocking, stunning, and traumatizing a small child in a complex and disorienting environment, and then rapidly throwing them the ball, then laughing, then jerking them around violently. One of the things that my parents would do is pull my ears. Well, that works, right? If a kid is in shock and disorientation and you yank on someone's ear, their body is going to respond. But what it's really saying is the most shocking, overwhelming feelings of your life have no space here. What it's really saying is there's something wrong with you that you have this feeling. There's something wrong with you that you're not valuable enough to be within this feeling. There's something wrong with you that you're not valuable enough to be seen in this feeling. And there's something wrong with you that none of this matters. The only thing that matters is my agenda for you and your body at this time. Now, this happened hundreds of times, and trust was destroyed. Trust in other people, trust in the cult, trust in the family system, trust in feeling. Meaning if I felt something, then the abandonment was more overt. And so I didn't trust myself to feel something because the abandonment hurt more when I did. So these are, learned patterns of shutting down, of shame, of impatience. And the only thing that feels natural, familiar, meaning of the family, to me today, is to behave as dissociatively and violently and shamingly towards myself and others as was done to me at that time. And so there is still no adult willing to love that little boy, willing to cry for the shock of recognition that there is a cruel and sadistic, malicious streak in the cult that targets innocence, that targets trust, that targets femininity, spontaneity, joy, being in the present, that targets that and hits it hard, hits it violently. You have got to get in the car right now. That's a targeted hit on that shocked state. It's telling the 5-year-old, I hate you. I hate your shock. I hate your hurt. I hate this feeling that you're in of presence. I hate it. Get a move on. Where does a 5-year-old go in that energy? Where is the room for life? Where is the room for living, for being? And is there any room to feel safe? Because I never felt safe from that moment. Because there was no competence. There was no competence to perceive the state. There was no competence to apologize for the state. There was no grief for the loss of humanity, as the empathic brain shuts down, as a cold reptilian element in the reptilian brain remains. The anger, the manipulation to try and steer things in a sociopathic and fucked up world. Where is the observation of these critical moments that are happening in every child's life to one degree or another? And the panicked anxiety of the grown-up that they will be found out in their crime, the crime of dehumanizing a family. A crime against humanity is being committed in one individual's life. But it is the same crime against humanity that is committed on a global scale. Whether it is racial extermination, racial hatred. Racism has existed in the U.S. There was a noticeable part of the U.S. population that was anti-Semitic during Hitler's time and was sympathetic towards Hitler. There's black-white racism. There's black-black racism. You have lighter skin. You have higher rank. It's a whole range. No one has exactly the amount of black as somebody else. So if your own people are racist, and you have people who are totally black being looked down on by people who are partially black. Malcolm Gladwell wrote about this in his mother's generation, about her racism based on skin color. It's a racism that takes place today in Asia, as more than $1 billion is spent to whiten the skin, as extraordinary measures are taken by women to hold umbrellas so that their skin will stay white. as women will tell me they feel ugly because their skin is dark. Self-racism. What was it, racism or is it colorism? But I feel ugly. My skin is not as white as yours. Where does that come from? It's a learned cult pattern of an entire world that seems to behave as if whiteness is better than blackness. And of course, there is a mythological framework for this, because evil is always black in a dualistic paradigm. It's a paradigm we've been using for a while. But how does it feel to be conflated with evil because of your skin color? How does that feel? And who's giving a damn about it? So in that fear of that most unimaginable hurt and loneliness, my defenses go up. I do not want to engage with the world. I don't want to have to interact with a world that does this to me and then punishes me for the symptoms of having done it to me. I don't want to have to deal with that world. I don't want to have to go to school and be humiliated in kindergarten. And in the sociopathic ignorance that is our cult, you see, all of my defenses to try and not go into that world were punished. We're punished. We're humiliated. We're not understood. And I was alone there. Show me the human being in 1,000 that has the interest and patience to dwell in this moment. Because I don't have such a human being that's interested in that moment anywhere on the planet. Now, I can pay such a human being. I can search for empathy as a trait. I can scan through 50 or so therapists and see who's awake, who has transcended their own wounds enough that they're actually really interested in other people. Because a traumatized, regressed child cannot be interested in other people. They are interested in holding their shame. So that interest looks good on the surface, but then something comes up and the traumatized, regressed person goes back into themselves, worried about their own appearance, worried about their own wound. And then I can drive to their place and pay them hundreds of dollars, and there will be a modicum of interest in this. But where is the therapist that weeps for the wound of lost innocence? That models for the 5-year-old that this is actually something worth crying over, because something precious, your humanity, has been numbed in that moment, and you have been rendered reptilian by the reptilian behavior of your cult. Where is that grief? Where are those tears? Because I cannot find them. That was not a template given to me as a mode of response to the grief I find in myself. I have nothing but the hard movement forward, but the ear pulling, but the threat, but the rage. Get it together and get out there. Get the bills paid. Get off your butt. Get out there. I have that as a hard taskmaster that has achieved thousands of goals in a state of anxiety and terror. I don't have the ability to cry. I don't have the shape. I don't know what that feels like and looks like. And I do not know how and where to find that shape in a cult that has so many thousands of ways of avoiding these feelings. In fact, the central rule in my family: avoid all intense feelings at all costs. There were just so many creative ways that they went about it. You're having an intense feelings? Go to your room. You're having an intense feelings? I will get more intense and dominate your intense feelings. You're having an intense feeling? I'm going to hit you. You're having an intense feeling? I'm going to humiliate you. You're having an intense feeling? I'm going to make you feel small in some way. You're having an intense feeling? I'm going to tune you out and not take you shopping with me, because this intense feeling is not welcome in this cult. So if you want to join me, you got to fall in line. You got to cut off the feeling. And so I see the tremendous amount of fear-based effort I'm spending to control and manage everything, and I see how it's killing me. And there's no one to talk to about it. My house is empty. I can go up and down my neighborhood, the wealthiest place of the United States, and I can't find somebody to talk to about this. I feel small. I feel unwelcome. I feel unloved again. And so a camera, without the cult filters, you see, the camera isn't giving me 1,000 facial expressions, looking at their watch, etc. The camera, a camera, an inanimate object, is doing a better job, a more reliable job, a more patient job than any member of my cult. The cult of no feeling, the cult of no time, the cult of rabid materialism, the cult of looking good, the cult of being tough, the cult of being masculine, the cult of no feeling, the cult in which you can go cradle to grave without a single hour of formal emotional literacy. It's not in kindergarten. My kindergarten teacher told me she would lock me up in the dark in the cellar and I would be eaten by witches if I had feelings, if I fidgeted, if I tried to let my body express the panic that I was in. That was my godmother, the symbol of God. It's just the witch aspect of the feminine, the addictive, compulsive betrayal aspect of the feminine. So that was given to me as the model of what it is to be a woman. But there wasn't grief. There weren't songs and tears that had feelings. what to do with this. You see? I've got to get going. What to do with this? What do you do with this? I've got to get to work. Because I am afraid of being punished if I don't. I'd give anything in the world to lift this pattern of shame, to lift this pattern of numbness. Take it all the money, everything. Just give me humane people. Give me people with the capacity to love, the capacity to feel, the capacity to be present. Some soup, some salad, some bread. That's enough. But take this pain off. But instead I'm offered every way imaginable to make money and every way imaginable to spend money. I'm offered a car and a big house, but no freedom. Because this icification, this dehumanization, this weight of pain and loneliness and shame, this anger and this hurt and this terror, all bound up into one, makes all of this relatively meaningless. I feel exhausted. I feel tired. I don't want to go out. And yet all I have is the template of pulling my own ear and getting another one of thousands upon thousands of goals accomplished. And everyone pretending that that's success.